Idioti, perché trainate voi la mia caviglia?
When Ivan spares the life of the creature that destroyed his family's farm, he expects nothing in return. Instead, he receives a gift so extraordinary that it puts his life in deadly danger. A ruthless king forces him to complete impossible tasks that have killed every man before him. But the real mystery isn't whether he'll survive, it's what his mercy has truly awakened. The story begins on a humble farm in the Russian countryside, where a family of farmers tends to their crops under the vast, open sky. As night falls, a blinding light traverses across the land, moving with supernatural speed and purpose. This ethereal glow belongs to a magnificent magical horse whose hooves pound the earth with otherworldly power, completely destroying the carefully tended farm fields in its wake. When the sun rises the next morning, the farmer rushes toward his crops alongside his sons, only to discover the devastating damage that greets them. The family's livelihood lies in ruins, trampled and destroyed by whatever force had visited them in the darkness. The father's anger burns hot as he surveys the destruction, and he demands that his sons stand guard for the upcoming night to catch whoever or whatever is responsible for this catastrophe.
Questa notte voi tre farete la guardia.
However, the older brothers quickly devise a plan to avoid the dangerous duty. They know their youngest brother Ivan has always been too kind-hearted and trusting for his own good, and they take advantage of his generous nature. The brothers convince Ivan that he alone should handle the guard duty, claiming it's a task perfectly suited for him. With no other choice and wanting to help his family, Ivan prepares himself for what promises to be a challenging night. As darkness approaches, Ivan positions himself in the fields, determined to capture the culprit and win his father's approval. The night air is still and quiet until he begins hearing the unmistakable sound of hooves approaching from the distance. His heart pounds as he grabs his rope and prepares to defend his family's farm from further destruction. When Ivan turns around to face the source of the noise, he's shocked to see an enormous white horse standing majestically behind him. The creature is unlike anything he's ever witnessed, gigantic, powerful, and radiating an otherworldly beauty that takes his breath away. Despite his amazement, Ivan knows he must act to protect his family's livelihood. He quickly throws his rope toward the magnificent creature, managing to lasso the magical horse around its neck. However, Ivan immediately regrets his hasty action as the powerful animal begins to charge forward with tremendous force, pulling the rope taut and dragging Ivan along behind it. The magical horse continues its wild gallop across the farm, breaking through nearby buildings and pulling Ivan like a ragdoll through the destruction. Despite the dangerous situation, Ivan refuses to let go of the rope, determined to complete his mission no matter the cost to his own safety. The supernatural creature suddenly begins leaping into the air, forcing Ivan to fly alongside it as they soar high above the clouds. For a brief, magical moment, Ivan experiences the incredible wonder of flight, seeing the world spread out below him like a magnificent tapestry.
Che vista meravigliosa da quassù!
The view is breathtaking, but his amazement is short-lived as the horse suddenly plunges back toward the earth. The crash landing sends Ivan tumbling through the farm fields, leaving him dazed and disoriented. When he slowly regains his senses, he realizes that the giant horse has fallen into a nearby swamp and is struggling desperately to free itself from the thick, muddy water. Despite everything the creature has put him through, Ivan's compassionate nature takes over. He can't bear to watch the magnificent animal suffer, so he rushes forward to help immediately. Ivan pulls on the creature with all his strength, but his efforts prove futile against the swamp's grip. Thinking quickly, Ivan spots a water wheel nearby and devises a rescue plan. He ties his rope to the mechanical device and uses the wheel's power to slowly pull the massive creature out of the dangerous swamp. The plan works perfectly, and the exhausted horse finally returns to solid ground. As Ivan approaches the freed animal, he notices something that touches his heart deeply, a single tear forming in the creature's eye. The horse clearly understands that it has been captured and expects the worst. However, Ivan's compassionate nature won't allow him to harm such a magnificent being. Instead of claiming his prize, Ivan makes the horse promise never to trample his family's farm again. After securing this pledge, he removes the rope and sets the magical creature free. The horse begins to glow with brilliant light as it celebrates its unexpected freedom, then rushes across the fields and disappears into the sky, leaving Ivan to contemplate what he's just experienced. The next morning brings an incredible surprise. When Ivan wakes from his slumber, he discovers a pair of beautiful horses waiting inside the family barn. As he approaches to investigate, he hears a strange voice and notices a small creature with horns emerging from the shadows. This turns out to be a talking foal, the offspring of the magical horse Ivan had freed the night before. The small horse explains that these magnificent animals are a gift from his grateful mother, sent to reward Ivan for his kindness and mercy. The foal introduces himself and tells Ivan that he will serve as a guide for the important journeys that lie ahead. Their conversation gets interrupted when Ivan's father appears, furious about the farm's destruction. Realizing he's in serious trouble, Ivan tries to escape, but the foal offers him a ride and tells him to hold on tight. The magical creature takes off like lightning, racing across the fields at blinding speed and bringing Ivan away from his father's wrath in mere seconds. Ivan is amazed by the foal's incredible speed, but the horse tells him this was merely a warm-up demonstration. When Ivan realizes they've forgotten about the other horses, the foal has a solution. The small creature whistles toward the farm, creating a shockwave that travels back to the barn and causes the two gifted horses to run away from the farmers and toward their new master. Now in possession of 3 magical horses, Ivan decides to head toward the city marketplace. His plan is simple: sell the animals to earn enough money to repair his father's destroyed farm. The foal, however, warns him against this course of action, sensing that trouble lies ahead. When Ivan arrives at the bustling marketplace, the magnificent horses immediately catch everyone's attention. Merchants and buyers gather around, amazed by the beauty and quality of these extraordinary animals. The foal urgently tells Ivan to leave immediately, warning that they're drawing too much attention to themselves. The small horse suggests they sell the animals to poor merchants on the outskirts of the city, explaining that Ivan would actually get more money this way than trading with wealthy buyers. However, Ivan refuses to take this advice, insisting that he wants to sell to the richest person in the city, the king himself. What Ivan doesn't realize is that this king is essentially an overgrown child who throws tantrums and mistreats everyone around him. The emperor is cruel, selfish, and accustomed to taking whatever he wants without paying for it. When the king appears on his balcony and sees Ivan's beautiful horses, he immediately desires them for himself. However, instead of offering fair payment, the old man concocts a devious scheme. He falsely accuses Ivan of stealing the horses,
Quei cavalli sono miei. Portateli via.
claiming that they're too expensive for a simple peasant to own legitimately. The king orders his soldiers to confiscate the animals immediately, essentially stealing them while maintaining a pretense of law enforcement. Ivan watches helplessly as his magical gifts are taken away without any compensation, exactly as the foal had predicted. However, the clever foal still has a backup plan. The small horse whistles just like before, causing the 2 horses to break free from their captors and run back to Ivan. During their escape, the king gives chase but ends up crashing into a pile of flour, covering himself in white powder and making himself look like a clown in front of all his subjects. The humiliated king demands Ivan's immediate execution, but his advisors wisely counsel against this action. They point out that Ivan has the favor of the crowd and hasn't actually broken any laws. Instead of execution, the king offers Ivan a position as royal groomer, responsible for caring for the kingdom's horses. Surprisingly, Ivan accepts this offer, much to the foal's dismay. The small horse tries to warn his friend about the dangers of working for such a treacherous ruler, but Ivan believes this arrangement will work out for the best. The king brings Ivan into his castle and gives him his new position, but the peace between them doesn't last long. That very night, the paranoid ruler begins having terrible nightmares about Ivan becoming more popular than himself. In his dreams, he sees the young man being crowned while crowds cheer his name, eventually leading to the king's own execution. These nightmares drive the king to spy on Ivan during the day, and he becomes increasingly frustrated by the young man's good nature and natural charisma. Everyone in the castle seems to like Ivan better than their actual ruler, which feeds the king's paranoia and jealousy. Desperate for a legitimate reason to execute Ivan, the king consults with his advisors. They suggest sending the young man on an impossible mission that no one has ever survived. This way, the king can appear merciful while ensuring Ivan's death through seemingly natural causes. The first impossible task involves capturing the legendary Firebird, a magical creature that has killed everyone who has ever attempted to catch it. Ivan surprisingly agrees to this mission immediately, much to everyone's shock. Ivan and the foal venture into a mysterious forest where the Firebird is said to reside. The foal explains that the creature loves to eat special nuts that grow only on certain trees in this area. These nuts, however, contain a powerful sedative that can knock out any creature within seconds. They locate the magical nuts growing on a giant tree, surrounded by various animals that have fallen asleep after eating them. Ivan and the foal collect the nuts and head toward the desert where the Firebird lives, waiting patiently for nightfall before making their move. When darkness arrives, Ivan spreads the sedative nuts across the clearing and waits. Soon, they notice bright light approaching from underground, and suddenly a magnificent creature covered in flames bursts into the air. The Firebird is even more spectacular than Ivan had imagined, with wings of pure fire and eyes like blazing stars. The creature immediately notices the nuts scattered on the ground and begins eating them greedily. Just as planned, the Firebird starts to wobble and eventually appears to fall asleep from the powerful sedative. Ivan approaches cautiously, believing he has successfully completed his mission. However, the Firebird has built up a tolerance to the tranquilizer. As Ivan gets closer, the creature suddenly awakens and attacks in fury. The Phoenix is enraged by the attempted capture and begins chasing Ivan and the foal through the forest, setting everything ablaze with its fiery presence. The chase becomes increasingly dangerous as the Firebird's anger causes the entire forest to burn. Trees turn to ash and the very air becomes difficult to breathe as the creature pursues them relentlessly. Ivan and the foal find themselves cornered with nowhere left to run. In desperation, Ivan offers the Firebird his last remaining nut. The creature grabs the food and swallows it immediately, and this final dose of sedative is enough to finally knock out the powerful bird. The Firebird falls into a nearby stream like a stone, apparently unconscious at last. The next morning, Ivan successfully ties up the unconscious Phoenix, but he quickly notices that the creature is no longer glowing with its characteristic fire. As he watches more closely, Ivan sees tears forming in the bird's eyes as it curls up in despair, clearly suffering from its captivity. Moved by compassion once again, Ivan cannot bear to see such a magnificent creature in pain. Despite knowing that freeing the firebird means he'll likely face execution, Ivan removes the restraints and sets the creature free. The phoenix immediately begins glowing again as its freedom is restored. Before disappearing into the sky, the grateful firebird drops a single feather as a gift for Ivan. This feather retains some of the creature's magical fire and serves as proof of their encounter. The foal warns Ivan that returning to the king empty-handed will mean certain death, but Ivan believes the feather will be sufficient evidence of their success. When they return to the city, Ivan is immediately arrested and sentenced to execution for failing his mission. He tries to explain what really happened, but no one believes his story about capturing and then freeing the legendary firebird.
E poi che è successo?
Ah, e poi l'ho liberato.
Ivan produces the firebird's feather as proof, but the magical item no longer glows with fire, making it appear to be nothing more than an ordinary feather. The crowd ridicules Ivan's claims, and he's dragged toward the execution platform. However, just as the executioner prepares to carry out the sentence, the feather suddenly begins glowing again. The firebird itself appears in the sky, responding to Ivan's call and proving that his incredible story is true. The crowd watches in amazement as the magnificent creature demonstrates its bond with Ivan. The king has no choice but to spare Ivan's life once again, but this only increases his hatred and paranoia. The situation becomes even worse when Ivan demonstrates that he can control the firebird at will, even changing the time of day by commanding the creature to brighten or dim its light. Desperate to eliminate Ivan once and for all, the king's advisor suggests a second impossible task. The king should marry the princess who lives in the sky palace on top of an icy mountain. No one has ever successfully reached this remote location, making it the perfect death sentence disguised as an honor. Ivan accepts this challenge as well, despite the foal's protests about his friend's apparent death wish. They travel toward the treacherous icy mountains, where the temperature drops far below freezing and the terrain becomes increasingly dangerous with each step. When they finally reach the peak, Ivan discovers a massive entrance made entirely of ice. However, when he tries to enter, an invisible magical barrier knocks him backward, preventing anyone from proceeding further. The foal suggests using the firebird's feather to counter this protective magic. Ivan throws the flaming feather against the ice wall, and the magical fire melts the barrier instantly. However, this also creates a massive flood of water that carries the foal down the mountainside. The small horse survives the fall by essentially turning into a snowball as he rolls down the slopes. Meanwhile, Ivan successfully enters the magical castle, where he finds countless women sleeping on beds made of ice. Ivan lacks the wisdom to determine which woman is the real princess among all these sleeping figures. Fortunately, the firebird's feather breaks through the magical illusion and forces the true princess to wake up. When Ivan approaches to greet her, the princess is immediately disappointed. She had expected a king or at least a noble to rescue her, not a simple peasant. This attitude angers her, and she rushes toward the castle entrance, clearly intending to escape. The princess reaches the edge of a massive cliff and declares that she has decided never to marry anyone. She criticizes all kings as cowards for not coming to rescue her personally, then jumps off the cliff without hesitation. Ivan doesn't hesitate to follow her, leaping off the cliff as well in a desperate attempt to save her life. The princess uses her dress like a parachute to slow her fall, but Ivan's weight causes them both to plummet toward the ground below. Just when all seems lost, the foal appears with a pair of magical wings, catching both falling figures at the last possible moment. The horse has gained the ability to fly, transforming into a winged creature capable of soaring through the clouds. As they fly back toward the city, Ivan finds himself falling in love with the beautiful princess despite her initially cold attitude toward him. The foal warns his friend not to become too attached, reminding him that the woman is meant to marry the king. When they arrive in the city, all the people are amazed by the princess's beauty, but the king is frustrated once again. Ivan has succeeded at another impossible task, which means the ruler must spare his life and provide a reward. The king is forced to give Ivan a substantial payment, but the young man seems unhappy despite his newfound wealth. The only person Ivan can think about is the beautiful princess, and he finds himself unable to concentrate on anything else. That night, Ivan decides to visit the princess by climbing through her window. To his surprise, she's happy to see him and even opens the window to let him inside. Ivan presents her with flowers he picked, and the princess begins to fall in love with him as well.
Che cosa vuol dire questo, Ivan?
However, their romantic moment gets interrupted when guards approach the chamber. The princess quickly pushes Ivan out the window to protect him from discovery. Fortunately, this is a fairy tale, so the fall doesn't kill him as it would in real life. The guards are led by an advisor who resembles a discount version of Jack Sparrow. He's there to help the princess prepare for her meeting with the king. After examining the available clothing options, the disappointed princess decides to dress like a pirate using the advisor's costume instead. When the princess meets the king in the dining room, she's shocked to discover that he's old enough to be her father. She pretends to be happy on the surface but immediately begins making excuses to delay their wedding. The princess claims it's her family tradition to use her grandmother's ring for the wedding ceremony. Unfortunately, this mysterious item was lost long ago and fell into the ocean. She insists that she cannot marry without this ring, hoping to make an impossible demand. To her dismay, Ivan suddenly bursts into the room and volunteers to find the lost ring immediately. This completely destroys the princess's plan to avoid the marriage, much to her frustration. For this third impossible task, even the magical foal has no idea where to begin searching. The small horse consults with the spirits of the wind, asking for guidance about the ring's location. The wind spirits show the foal a vision of a massive whale flying across the sky. They explain that the ring is hidden inside this enormous creature, somewhere deep in the ocean. The spirits then part the clouds to show the foal the exact direction where the whale can be found. The next morning, the flying foal takes Ivan toward the whale's location, soaring high above the ocean waves. However, their flight gets interrupted when Ivan crashes into a flock of seagulls, causing him to fall toward the water below. When Ivan plunges into the ocean, he's surprised to see massive chains stretching down into the depths. These chains appear to be attached to what looks like an enormous island floating just beneath the surface. Ivan swims toward what he assumes is land, but soon realizes that the entire island is actually the whale they've been seeking. The creature is so large that its back resembles a small continent, complete with what appears to be vegetation growing on its surface. The foal is able to translate the whale's language and explains the creature's tragic situation to Ivan. The whale accidentally swallowed several ships full of sailors many years ago, and as punishment, other sea creatures chained it to the ocean floor. The whale desperately wants to release the trapped humans from its stomach, but it doesn't know how to free itself from the heavy chains that bind it. The creature has been suffering in this prison for years, unable to help either itself or the people trapped inside. Ivan develops a plan to help both the whale and the trapped sailors. He decides to make the giant creature sneeze by tickling the inside of its massive nostrils. If the plan works, the whale should be able to expel both the water and the trapped ships from its stomach. Ivan and the foal enter the whale's body through its enormous nostrils. Inside, they find a cavern that glows like the night sky, filled with bioluminescent organisms that create a magical atmosphere. The foal uses his wings to tickle the sensitive interior of the whale's nose while Ivan helps with the process. Their efforts cause the giant creature to slowly stand up, breaking all the chains that have held it prisoner for so many years. The whale prepares for what might be the most dramatic sneeze in history. Water begins rushing toward Ivan and the foal as they desperately try to escape the creature's body before the massive expulsion occurs. The whale's sneeze creates a fountain effect that shoots water hundreds of feet into the air. Ivan and the foal manage to fly out of the creature just in time, watching as all the broken chains fall away and the whale is finally freed. The massive creature crashes back into the ocean with tremendous force, but this impact releases all the ships that were trapped inside its stomach. Sailors who have been imprisoned for years suddenly find themselves free, celebrating their unexpected rescue. As the whale disappears into the ocean depths, Ivan realizes he has completely forgotten about the ring he was supposed to find. However, the grateful whale has one final gift for its rescuer, the very ring that the princess needs for her wedding. When Ivan returns to the city with the ring, he faces a difficult decision. He doesn't want to see the princess marry the cruel king, but he has no choice but to fulfill his mission. Ivan decides to visit the princess one more time, secretly climbing through her window as he did before. Unfortunately, the king's advisor has been watching through a telescope and spots Ivan's approach. Ivan manages to enter the princess's chamber and gives her the ring while confessing his love for her. However, guards quickly surround the area and break through the door to capture him. The commotion wakes the king, who grabs a gun and heads toward the window. He sees the flying foal outside the princess's chamber and immediately shoots the creature, hitting it in the back and causing it to fall. Ivan is captured and loses all his wealth as punishment for his unauthorized visit to the princess. However, he only cares about what will happen to the woman he loves. Meanwhile, the wounded foal survives the gunshot and makes contact with the princess. The small horse explains that the situation is very bad for Ivan, and the princess reveals that she tried to save him by tricking the king, but her plan backfired. The princess had convinced the king that there was a way to become young again through a magical ritual. She told him he needed to immerse himself in 3 containers, one filled with boiling water, one with freezing water, and one with boiling milk. Her plan was to trick the king into killing himself with this fake ritual. However, the king's advisor suggested testing the process on Ivan first, since the young man was going to be executed anyway. Realizing that her lover will die horribly, the princess tells the foal that they must add the correct magical ingredients to make the ritual actually work. This includes her grandmother's ring, the firebird's feather, and the flower of life, which only grows at the edge of the world. The foal promises to retrieve the flower before noon, but this mission becomes much more difficult because his wing was injured by the king's gunshot. Instead of flying, the creature must run across vast distances to reach his destination. The next day, crowds gather to witness Ivan's execution. 3 giant containers are brought out for the public spectacle, one filled with boiling water, one with freezing water, and one with boiling milk. The king arrives on the platform alongside the princess, and guards drag Ivan toward the deadly ritual. The old man tells the crowd that he's willing to forgive the prisoner if Ivan somehow manages to survive this ordeal. Ivan realizes he's about to die and decides to confess his feelings publicly. He tells everyone that his only crime was loving the princess, declaring his emotions for her one final time.
Sono colpevole anche.
This confession angers the king even more, and the old man personally pushes Ivan into the first container filled with boiling water. However, the princess immediately throws her grandmother's ring into the liquid, causing magical protection to activate. The ring's power launches Ivan out of the boiling water and into the second container filled with freezing liquid. The firebird, sensing danger to its friend, commands its feather to enter the freezing water, which again protects Ivan and launches him toward the final container. Ivan falls into the third container filled with boiling milk while the princess prays that the foal will arrive in time with the flower of life. The small horse is indeed racing across the countryside, desperately trying to reach his destination before it's too late. The foal finally reaches the edge of the world, where he finds the magical flower in a place filled with darkness. The flower warns the creature that picking it will result in death, but the brave foal ignores this warning and grabs the plant anyway. At that exact moment, the flower of life falls into the boiling milk, creating a magical reaction that lights up the entire sky. Everyone watches in amazement as Ivan begins to levitate into the air like a divine being, glowing with supernatural power.
Guardate! Guardate lassù!
The ritual transforms Ivan into something magnificent, handsome, powerful, and radiating an otherworldly charisma that makes everyone cheer his name. The princess looks at him in disbelief as he slowly flies toward her, finally free from the king's persecution. Seeing that the ritual actually works, the greedy king jumps into the magical liquid as well, not realizing that he's making a terrible mistake. Without the proper ingredients, the ritual has the opposite effect on him. A giant bubble rises into the air with the king trapped inside, eventually lifting him into the atmosphere as he shouts angrily. The people laugh at the old man's fate and decide to crown Ivan as their new ruler while the former king floats away into the sky. Ivan can hardly believe what's happening as he looks lovingly at his new queen. However, he soon realizes that his best friend the foal is still missing, and his joy turns to concern. The magical creature is lying in a grass field, apparently dying from the effects of picking the flower of life. A persistent fly bothers the foal as he tries to rest peacefully, making his final moments less than dignified. When Ivan finds his friend, the foal explains that he's about to die very soon. This causes Ivan to embrace the animal immediately, not wanting to let his best friend go. However, the princess quickly reveals that this is all a lie. She explains that the flower of life tells this same story to everyone who tries to pick it, only actually killing those who lack the courage to follow through with their mission. Since the foal was brave enough to complete his task despite the warning, he's actually perfectly fine. The threat of death was merely a test of his determination and loyalty. Realizing that he'll live after all, the foal joins the celebration alongside all the people as they welcome the ascension of their new king. Ivan and the princess are finally united, having overcome impossible odds through courage, kindness, and the magic that comes from showing mercy to those in need. The story concludes with Ivan's transformation from a simple farm boy into a beloved king, all because he chose compassion over cruelty when facing the magical horse that destroyed his family's crops. His initial act of mercy set in motion a chain of events that ultimately led to his greatest happiness, proving that kindness truly is the most powerful magic of all.